Good evening. You're watching The Smoking Section. I'm Emily Ouija. Tonight I'm chatting with Pat Nurse, an English journalist and blogger. Pat's seminal blog, Tea and Cigarettes, was a big influence on many smokers in the UK and all over the world. Welcome, Pat.
Hello.
How long did you write Tea and Cigarettes, and why did you stop?
Oh, well, blimey, how long did I write it? Do you know what? I don't think it was more than 2-3 years, I think. I mean, people can correct me, I can't remember, but I think it was no more than 3, I don't think. And why did I stop writing it? Well, at the time, looking for work in the media, potential employers Googling me, there's very much a lot of anti-smoking in the media, and I didn't want, at the time when I needed work, I didn't really want that going against me. And also just because it just felt like a moan in the end. I just got fed up of moaning. We need action, really, is what we need. We can all sit here on our keyboards and we can write and talk for England and America probably and the rest of the world. But ultimately, if we don't do something, it's just hiding behind the keyboard, isn't it? And I didn't actually feel that it was achieving anything.
It's interesting you bring that up. Do you think that smokers need to get organized? Do you think that would actually help? I mean, would it be possible to turn back the tide of anti-smoking legislation?
Well, what I do think is that there's plenty of people talking for us. The various, let's face it, I couldn't even count the number of anti-smoker organisations that say they speak for smokers. And now we've got the vapors, who jump in and say that they're speaking for smokers. And obviously because a lot of them are ex-smokers or even dual users. But nobody's actually speaking. We're not speaking for ourselves. We're never heard. We're very invisible. Yes, we're seen on the street smoking, but anybody who talks for us are always talking about how we want to quit. We're not there saying for ourselves, that no, we don't want to quit. We're happy smokers. We just want to be left alone. So I do think that there should be some activism. I do think that we need to be seen and heard. I do think at certain times, like in the UK at the moment, we've got the party conferences. I think maybe to be there with our banners, and our placards and the rest of it, just to show that we're there, that we're sick of not being heard, that it is about time that actually we had a place around the table with the vapors and the anti-smokers and the stop smoking people and the rest of them. Why can't we have a voice of our own? So in that sense, I think we need to be active. But how? Well, I don't know.
So you think that being visible is important, but do you also think that there's value to more, I guess you would term it political activism, like writing letters to your representatives?
Yeah. I do, but I don't actually think that gets very far. I can't count the number of health secretaries and the junior ministers and the public health ministers that I've written to over time. And you know what? The replies are always pretty much identical. The government has got an agenda and it's not going to deviate from that agenda. And it doesn't matter what you say about it or whatever concern you bring up. At the end of the day, it comes back to the same. If, I have a MP here, and he took up all of my concerns about new smoking legislations and measures, and he took them all to the public health minister. And every single reply I got was pretty much the standard, that the government is aiming to tackle the health inequalities created for smokers. And so therefore we want to get our numbers down to, I think it was 11% then, now it's like 5% or something. But it never answers the question of, for example, why have you imposed a dangerous prison smoking ban that's causing riots and fires and self-harming and suicides? You answer a question like that, and very often you get back from the minister, the government is determined to get smoking rates down to, and this is to tackle the health inequalities created, and it just goes round and round in a circle. So until we've actually got representatives who are prepared to get off the agenda bandwagon, listen to actual people and what they want. And by people, I don't just mean don't smoke. I mean the people who smoke as well. Because I tend to feel in this society at the moment that if you are a smoker, and I think there's varying types of smoker. What is a smoker? You get people who smoke. You get people who would class themselves as smokers, identify as smokers. You can even get people who smoke who claim to be non-smokers, because they're ashamed of having a cigarette in hand or whatever. I just don't feel that kind of political activism is getting anywhere. I'm certainly not into, I'll make this very clear here and now, I'm definitely not into any kind of violent protest. So I wouldn't advocate for criminal damage or violence or anything like that. I'm very much into peaceful protest, but I think that protest is probably the way to go now, because our representatives are not listening to us. And even if they are listening to us, they're just giving us lip service. They're not, really listening to us, and they don't really care what we have to say about things anyway.
So I think one of the clearly stated aims of anti-smoking activists is that they want to denormalize smoking.
But you see, let's for a start, one thing I think smokers have to start doing is stop using the language created for us. When they say denormalisation, we know they mean stigmatisation. So let's use the proper term, shall we? What they're talking about is stigmatisation of smokers. That's what they mean by denormalisation of smoking.
That's an interesting way to look at it. So if you look at it as stigmatization of smokers, which we all know it is, do you think that there's value then in as you said, showing that you smoke? People see you on the street smoking. Do you also think that there's value in showing ordinary everyday smokers and letting them tell their stories?
Well, yes, I think there is. But I think, again, you'll get a whole raft of different views from people who smoke. Some smokers will sit there smoking, telling you how much they hate themselves for smoking, So I don't think you'll get any one view from smokers is the point. I think there are some of us. Again, the language they use for us is hardcore. I don't like that language because I think it's been designed to kind of equate us with drug addicts, like heroin addicts. You talk about hardcore drug users. So I think they talk about the hardcore smoker in a kind of a way of it's sort of promoting that addiction myth in a way by using that term, and I hate it. So I'd rather, lifelong or dedicated, because that's what I am, lifelong and dedicated. I'm a happy smoker. I'm never going to quit. I don't care what they do to me. I will never quit. Our kind of smoker, is not the same as, say, the people who smoke and stand there with the smokers, talking about how much they hate themselves.
Oh, yeah, of course. So I remember on your blog on Tea and Cigarettes, one of the features that I really loved was called Octabber. Can you explain Octabber?
Oh, yeah, Octabber. Oh, gosh, yeah. Well, Octabber really was just a one-off. It was supposed to be just a one-off, a bit of a sort of a, not satirical because it wasn't funny, but it was just kicking back. We have all the no smoking days and all the rest of it. And then suddenly we got this Stoptober, which was a stupid name. And it took me a hell of a long time before I could say it properly without stuttering. Stoptober. That's the one, Stoptober. Say it over and over again and you'll get it. Stoptober, Stoptober, Stoptober. And then I was just, browsing through Twitter and I saw Chris Snowden had sort of like satirically said, something like, oh, well, I'm not doing Stoptober, I'm doing Octabber. And tab, for those of you in America who perhaps don't know, but tab is a northern term for a cigarette. So October, tab, cigarette. Well, why not call us tabbers instead of smokers? So here we are, tabbers. So it was just a kick back at that, really, just to say, again, going back to what I said earlier, that there's so many people talking for us, but we're never allowed to speak for ourselves. This was just one way that I wanted to say, well, you know what? I don't want to quit. I'm a happy smoker. And if the rest of you out there are happy smokers like me and don't want to quit, well, forget Stoptober and come and have a bit of a say on Octabber, or enjoy Octabber and during the month, just tell yourself you're a happy smoker. Don't be ashamed of it, sort of thing. That was the sort of reasoning behind it, really. But I mean, I did 1 year and I think I did another, and then I've just sort of let it slide. Really, I just don't have the time now.
I think part of Octabber, I could be wrong, but I think it was part of that was called the Tabber's Tales, where you actually had smokers kind of telling their own stories.
So what I did that first year was just for a single day of Octabber, and I think it was 30 days or something, was it? I mean, or was it 20 days? I mean, when it first started, I think it was something silly like maybe even 28 days. I can't remember. But I think it was based on the idea that if you could stop smoking for 28 days, hey, you're cured for life and you'll never smoke again kind of thing. So it wasn't the whole month. It was a certain part of that month. But anyway, I think somebody suggested to me, well, hey, why do just the 28 days? Why not do the whole month of October? And have a person every month. So I thought, well, why not? And so, happily, there were people who were quite happy to have a go. I was on there and various other people, some we know, some we don't, who were on there. People on Facebook that, I noticed smoke and would say to them, well, how do you feel about it? Do you want to have a go? And then they would send me their story. And some of those stories were really good, So I left them there. I have wanted to update, and I've been, I've left various messages, although I haven't honestly chased it in quite the same way as I did when I did it. But, I often put out messages, and if people want to update, so if you quit smoking, are you still smoking, whatever, but nothing ever came back. But there it is, and there it'll stay, I suppose, for anybody who might find it interesting.
I think it was a great idea, and I think it's similar to what Audrey Silk is also doing right now on Facebook. She has a group called Smoking is Normal.
I've seen that, yeah.
Yeah, and I think it's the same idea.
And the stories on there, actually, are from Octabber anyway. They've been lifted from there and pasted and put up there. I don't think Audrey's done that. I think, like Zayat's Lion Taylor, one of the people on there, he's done that and put a story up there and so on. So the stories that you see around and about like that, they are those ones from Octabber.
How did your life change after the 2007 smoking ban?
Yeah, it was 2007 in England. How did it change? Well, I stopped going out. One thing, me and my friend, a friend of mine, we used to meet about 4 o'clock, and we'd do that sort of about 4 until about 7. Curry and beer night, actually. She quite liked that. And we used to meet regularly like that. So the first thing that happened was we stopped meeting. We tried to continue, but it was cold and it was miserable, and we stopped meeting. We meet in the day now. But no, I don't go out. And I refuse pretty much to go inside, because I feel the first time that I go inside a pub or a restaurant or a cafe, I'm saying I accept the ban. And that's why I'm sitting inside here. But actually, I don't accept the ban, and I will never accept the ban. And as long as I don't accept the ban, I feel that I can't go inside. It's like a block at the door that stops me from going in. Because each time, if I go in that pub, I am saying I accept this ban, and I'll never accept the ban. Not when I know that this issue can be sorted out through choice of venue, segregation, or even using 21st century technology like air filtration systems, rather than using the 4th century Spanish Inquisition bans. I'm against all that kind of thing, really. I think choice for everybody. I don't want to impose my smoke on people who don't like it. I never have wanted to. Hence why I think smokers have always moved away and out of places and never complained about it. Even in the 2007 ban, some of us complained about it loudly, but most people just did as smokers do, shrugged their shoulders and moved on and put up with it. But I think there comes a point where you have to say, now hang on a minute, everybody is important in this country and everybody matters. And if we truly and honestly believe in equality, then why can we not have, say, one single pub in a whole town or city where people who smoke can go and smoke, and people and enjoy the company of other people who smoke, and people who don't like smoking or hate smoking have got every other pub in the town to go and choose from. I don't understand why that can't be done, and I'll never understand why that can't be done. And I don't accept the argument on the protecting the health of bar workers. That was the use they used. And got the ban on, but they never talk about the health of bar workers anymore now. Most of them were put on the dole or made unemployment, obviously, when their pubs closed, but they don't talk about health of bar workers anymore. They talk about children. And, I find it ever so strange that they thought smoking was so absolutely dangerous that they had to go into pubs and protect drunken adults first before protecting children in the home or the car. It's crazy. It's absolute crazy. We know. People who don't follow this issue would probably just believe everything that's sort of fed to them. But, it's just, it's changed my life a lot. The other thing it did, of course, was to shove me in a dark and dirty corner with a sign around my neck that said "smoke a kick here." And that's really what it did. And that was really what the ban aimed to do, was to set the public against people who smoke.
And so you participated in some protests, is that right? One at a bus station.
Oh, yeah, I did that. Yeah. When was that? That would have been around about maybe 2010. I can't remember, 2010, 11 or 12, somewhere around there. But it just, I just decided to have this protest in the bus station, which is pumping out filthy, dirty diesel fumes all over. But we're banned from smoking within this bus station. So I just, well, it's not even enclosed really, or it wasn't. It's been demolished since because they built a new one. But at the time, it wasn't really enclosed, but they banned smoking in the bus station. I thought that was pretty ridiculous. So I thought if I'm going to have a protest about the smoking, the completeness of the smoking ban, then I'll go to the place where the smoking ban, to my mind, was the most stupid, i.e. the bus station. About 15 to 20 of us there, and we held up, placards saying it's not about health and we deserve to be heard. And we gave out literature, all tracing the whole history of passive smoking, giving some links to certain things like Velvet Glove, Iron Fist, and various other blogs, Dick Puddlecoats and other ones. And yeah, the protest went really well. In fact, we were even joined by members of the public. I remember there was a lady with a dog who came along to see what was going on, and they joined us, and a couple of other people joined us. And what was interesting, I think, and quite significant as well, was that I was also approached by a man with a bag of very cheap tobacco. And it was so cheap. I asked him, how can it be this cheap? Oh, my mate goes to France and get it. And I said, no, he doesn't go to France and get it, because if he went to France and got it, it would be a lot more expensive than this, Anyway, I didn't buy any of his tobacco, obviously, and he cleared off. But to my mind, it proved to me that actually what these smoking restrictions are doing is actually driving smoking underground, creating a huge black market, and the sort of person who carries tobacco in a plastic bag and doesn't care who he sells it to, whether it's me or a child in the bus station or anywhere else. These people are under the radar. They're not being looked at. Meanwhile, responsible shopkeepers are being bullied and shoved more and more and more to stop selling tobacco. And if that happens, then that man with a bag and anybody else like him, and who knows what else is in that bag, drugs or heroin or who knows. But at the end of the day, what they're doing is that they're making smoking far more dangerous by putting it underground than if they just kept it above ground. Stop being so damn hysteric about it, because it almost has created mass hysteria, I think, about smoking. And let's control it properly. So keep it out of the hands of people who are not old enough to smoke, and obviously make sure, as we all know, the dangers and risks, because I do believe there are risks involved. And I think, to be honest, we'd get on better as a society like that. We'd get on better. We'd all get on, a lot better together. The people who need to be protected, i.e. children and underage people, could be protected, and people who are fully aware of the risks and indulge in illegal activity could frankly be left alone without the harassment and intimidation.
So if smoking bans are not about health, as you just mentioned...
No, I don't believe they are.
What are they about?
I think they're partly about control. I think it's also a sort of an ideological aim. Since the 1970s, about 1970, I think they decided they wanted a smoke-free world. And by they, I mean anti-smoking groups, people involved in cancer groups. It's got to be said, global billionaires like Michael Bloomberg, people like that, the people who've got the money into shoving and influencing those people, they're the ones pushing the bans. Action on Smoking and Health push bans. Why? Because that's what Action on Smoking Health do. That's what they're paid to do. That is their job. It's not necessarily about health, because if it was about health, you wouldn't shove old people outside in the freezing cold because you don't like the idea that they smoke. You'd have some sort of place, or even a flipping shed somewhere outside where those people could sit without having to be treated quite so cruelly. So I don't believe it was about health. I think that was the day, or that was the time, when I absolutely decided to myself it was not about health. I think before that, I could accept, quite a lot of what was said about smoking and health. But when they imposed the ban, I thought, no, it's not about health. And I think most people know it's not about health.
Do you think that there could ever be a smoke-free world? I know right now there's an aim.
Again, I really hate that term, and I know we've all got used to using it because it's been around for so long. But when they say smoke-free, what they actually mean, free future, is that they want a world without smokers in it. Let's face it, that's what they want. Well, tough. I don't want a world without smoke in the future, because I can't think of anything more sterile and boring myself. And again, it goes down to the fact of Are we equal? Do we all have a say? Or is it just a handful of overpaid political lobbyists who decide what the rest of us should put up with, whether that's a world without smokers in the future or not? That's my view.
So I said something to you the other day, kind of flippantly. I was saying that people like you and I, who might try to discuss these issues, try to debate whether secondhand smoke is actually harmful, whether firsthand smoking is really as bad as people say it is, and people kind of look at us almost like flat earthers, like that we're so out there, we're so crazy that we believe this, that it's almost like proponents of a flat Earth theory. And you told me something very interesting about a man named Wilbur Glenn Voliva. Is that right?
Yes, that's right. Yeah, yeah. Well, he was one of the first anti-smokers, and he erected a big sign on the border with of Illinois that basically says, you have no right to smoke in our town, and if you smoke in our town, it's like spitting in the water that we drink or something, And they had these two, I think there's two sour-faced women holding this poster up, very Puritan-looking people. But what was interesting about him is that I think he was very rich, and he actually believed the world was flat even then. And I think we're talking sort of early 1900s, aren't we?
That's right.
Thereabouts. Yeah.
That's right.
Whether many years after it was well proof the earth was round, let's put it that way, or many centuries after. But here he is, smokophobic, actually putting in an advert in newspapers at the time, asking that those who could prove his theory that the earth was flat would be given this wonderful, financial reward to prove it. So, who are the flat earthers? Are they smokers who are a little bit skeptical about all this propaganda that's being fed to them? Let's face it, the sort of studies I've seen are from smoking can make your nipples fall off to smoking can create smoking. People who smoke the children of people who smoke, will grow up to be criminals. So those are two studies I've had. Who's the flat earthers? Those of us who believe that, or those of us who say, that sounds pretty rubbish, and those of us who have smoked more than 50 years and still have both nipples, thank you very much. I mean, who is the flat earther? I don't feel like a flat earther.
It makes you realize, I think, how much of being a human being, is about really wanting to be in the herd and, really agree with the majority, and I think as humans, we really want the fellowship of other people around us who agree with us, and it's very difficult to go against that kind of mainstream belief.
Well, I think, are you a leader or a follower? I think it comes down to that. If you're a follower, you're going to be in the herd and you're going to follow the herd, aren't you? And you're going to be too frightened to speak out, even if you have your own doubts or you're a little bit skeptical about anything, you're going to be too frightened to say anything about it. And then you've got leaders, people who say, hang on a minute, that doesn't sound quite right, and then you've got rebels. And I think smokers come from all those groups. I think, smoking is a rebellious act. I think some of us maybe started as a rebellious act. And I think a lot of people grow out of smoking, actually. When they grow out of that rebellious phrase, I think they grow out of smoking. I don't believe everything. I'm not one of these people who believes that smoking doesn't cause anything, that there's absolutely no harm, risk to smoking at all. I'm not one of those people. I do believe there are risks to smoking, but I think there's an awful lot of factors that come into play with it. So genetics, general fitness and health, all sorts of things, I don't know. But the things that we're that are around us all the time, how much are we exposed to other factors that harm us, as well as how much do we smoke? That's a factor too. So I don't think that, these people who say if you have just one cigarette in your life, that's it, you're condemned to die at some point. I mean, that's just hysteria, really. That sort of view is hysteria. What's frightening is that view sometimes comes from people who are completely rational in every other way. But when it comes to the issue of smoking, they seem to completely lose the plot. Yeah. And reason and rationality just seems to fly out of the window.
You mentioned the other day also, a very good point is that, because of this hysteria surrounding smoking, there's not a lot of research really being done that could be very valuable into actually, what is the cause of a lot of these diseases that are just sort of blithely attributed to smoking? There's probably a lot of valuable research that just is not being done because of the prejudice against smoking.
Well, yeah, that's true. I mean, we know that smoking is good for certain conditions, but we also know that the risks to bad health of smoking probably outweigh the benefit that maybe smoking could bring to things. But I do think there's a lot more research to be had. To my mind, there hasn't been enough research on smokers who haven't got ill, who are still quite healthy, who don't suffer from COPD and the rest. What is it about those people? Or let's put it in the anti-smoker terms for a change, shall we? They say 1 in 2 of us will die. Well, what about, so if one of us dies, what about the other one who lives forever? What is it about them that makes them immortal? Where is the research to say the difference between the two? With lifelong smokers, one of the reasons I won't quit is because I've smoked since I was 8 years old. And to my mind, my body has grown and evolved, and everything that I've done in my life, tobacco has been a part of it. And if I was to suddenly stop smoking and stop any tobacco going into my body, what would be, the outcome? I know that there's one study that has shown that I think it's currently people who smoke have a 20% risk of getting lung cancer. But of those lifelong smokers, within 7 years, their chances of getting lung cancer go up 60%. I absolutely want to know, how will this affect me? Because I am not like you. You are not like the lady I work with who hates herself for smoking. We are all different people. And even though they want to push this one-size-fits-all health approach onto us, we're not all one size, and it doesn't fit all. And me as a lifelong smoker from childhood is not going to be the same as somebody who maybe started smoking at 30 and quit at 40. We've had so much propaganda from the tobacco industry before they got ashamed of what they sold. And we got so much propaganda from the anti-tobacco industry that somewhere in the middle, we little smokers are like, hang on a minute. But we'll never get the truth on smoking. In fact, we never will.
Thank you so much for joining us, Pat. It's wonderful to have you on.
Okay. Anyway, hello and goodbye.